Hello, I'm Nancy Daniels, K-State Research and Extension Specialist in Community Vitality, and I'm here to report on your first impressions process for Weir, Kansas. Let's just begin. Last year, Weir asked for a first impressions process, and Mound City was chosen to be your partner city because they're a far enough distance away that you would be really unfamiliar with each other. And you're a very, very similar population size according to our best estimates. We were ground to a halt because of the pandemic, and it wasn't until September when I came to Weir and trained your volunteers about the visit and the survey, and I took pictures on that day. 3 visitors came from Mound City in September, and tonight we're presenting those results by a video recording with the hope that you will continue to use these this results for further discussion and to create action plans. First of all, why do we even do first impressions? Well, we tend not to see what we see every day. It's not until a visitor comes to our home that we realize that things are a little shabby, maybe need a little bit of pickup. And the same thing happens in our towns. We see things every day. One of the first things that you'll find out from this is a new sense of respect and pride in what you do have in Weir. Often we forget why we love our town, and the process usually reminds us that first. The second thing that happens is occasionally some critical things will be noted, but you dismiss it when you hear yourself say it. But when you hear a stranger say it, you'll go, oh, I guess that does show. And the third thing I would note is this is a point in time observation by 3 people, and 4 if you include any observations I may add. But remember, it's just a point in time. We may have missed something. We may be wrong. It's just feedback, and you get to choose which parts are helpful to you. I'd like to start by reframing how we talk about where we live. Ben Winchester is a senior research fellow from the University of Minnesota, and he tells us that we need to know that rural is changing. It's not dying. Everything is changing. I'm standing in Topeka, Kansas as I speak to you, and that's true for Topeka, Kansas as well. Brain gain, the process where 30 to 49-year-olds move back to a rural place, is something that he has discovered has been quietly happening since the 1970s. But only when we apply the data to it can we know that it's happened. We are learning that people research a number of places before they move to a rural town. So you're going to see and hear a lot of emphasis on how you present yourself on the internet. Don't say that you're in the middle of nowhere. You are in the middle of everywhere. You and I both live in one place, we work another, and we play another. And as long as we have transportation and internet, everything is accessible to you. I live in a community of 125,000 people, and yet I chose a job that's an hour away from me. And that's no different than it is for you. Everything's a possibility. Ben also says that almost half of us moved between the years of 1995 and 1999. And when you consider a survey of newcomers into rural areas, they give a lot of reasons for going to a rural place: a simpler pace of life, safety and security, affordable housing, outdoor recreation, quality schools. And do you know that a job isn't even in the top 10 reasons that they move to your community? Now stop and think about that. You take those things for granted, but that's what we all want and what we love. So right off the bat, you're ahead of the town that I live in of 125,000 people. In small towns, we take it for granted that everyone knows each other. This is not true. Ben suggests one way to do that, an interesting way to do that, is to invite newcomers to a meal every so often and let them get to know each other. And when they look around and realize that they're not the only ones coming into town, it changes not only their perspective about where they are, but it changes your perspective too, that you realize that newcomers are coming into your town all the time. In a small town like yours, if you bring just a few people into the town every year, you'll have a 10% increase in 10 years. And it really matters. The housing challenge is a challenge for everybody in every town. This line is there for every first impressions because it's true for every town, but housing is achievable as well. We really have to monitor what we say about our hometown and how we serve the people who walk in our doors. Don't say you have to live here 20 years to be an insider. It's not true, and don't say it. And then don't act like it either. Now, here's something to really take note of. You probably could prove it by looking around your town, but a great many of the homeowners in your town are baby boomers, and at least 30% of them are over 75. And that's a problem because those baby boomers are probably in a 3 or 4 bedroom house that somebody else needs to have and they're tired of. They don't need all that room. They don't want to clean all those rooms or decorate them or any of those other things. So consider, baby boomers, consider moving into something smaller and more organized, some retirement housing, not nursing facilities. We don't need that. We're healthy, we're vital, we're ready to keep going, but we don't want to take care of the yard anymore. And we don't need all those bedrooms. So let's think about creating opportunities for those baby boomers to move out and move over so that other people with the families that your schools need can come in. Ben Winchester has been our guest twice on a First Friday call. I'll tell you more about the First Friday calls later, but you can see the recording that he talks about housing and about brain gain issues on our First Friday archive there at the URL I noted. So let's look at the data. This is the end of the census period, and so I don't feel very confident of these numbers, but it's the best data I have. According to the data that we have, your population declined by 19% in the 8 years between 2010 and 2018. In the red are the comparison numbers for the state of Kansas, and so you can just use that as a benchmark. The median household income in Weir is $34,000. 82% of your 25-year-olds have a high school or GED, and about 15% are college educated with a four-year degree. The median age in your community is a little younger than the statewide average. However, your poverty rate is more than twice as high as the state average, and that's a real concern. Those are systemic issues that we really need to address. When the visitors were there, the page was down and said it was being worked on. They saw that the Facebook page is active and informational. And by the way, there's a separate report that accompanies this, which is the compiled narrative of the actual survey that your visitors filled out. And you can see what each one of them wrote. My comments are meant to be a synopsis of some of the things that they talked about. So the Weir, Kansas Facebook page comes up at the top of the search, and that's a good thing. these are my comments, and if they're in italic, they're my comments. The official site came up right at the top of the search, and the sheriff's link is broken. But it does have a nice link to state and federal government resources, which is helpful. This is a Facebook page I often see in small towns. It's a Facebook generated page, and people smarter than I am tell me that it can be taken over and personalized if you have somebody that will do that. Later on, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the value of getting together with your calendars and trying to co-market various things. You don't have a ton of other Facebook pages in town, so but consider that as a possibility. So the very first thing after we asked them to make observations about what the information they could find on the internet, we asked them to take a 5-minute trip through your city and just from border to border, entrance to entrance, and make some observations about their impressions. Their impressions were that there weren't very many businesses, but the ones that you have are in decent condition. They saw a lot of trailer homes, some yards that need to be cleaned up, and entry signs that say, "Welcome to Weir." I find that the pictures are probably the most helpful to this process, so I'm going to give you a moment to see what you see. They noticed a library, a bank, a post office, a quick shop. That's a generic model of a quick shop, funeral home, and egg choice. And they noticed a friendly customer service at the quick stop. Amenities and parking. There was a person who took care of the streets in Mound City, and he noted the condition of the streets was pretty good. The business access is okay. Probably the bigger problem you have is not enough businesses to be able to park in one place and go to more than one business at a time. We ask about amenities, and these are the things we ask about: public restrooms, trash containers, benches, and play areas. I think they're actually talking about the park more than they are the downtown. You certainly don't have a play area in the downtown. More downtown photos. Occasionally I miss a photo, and I missed one here. We ask about other retail shopping, and in your case, you don't really have what I would call other retail. Usually I coach the visitors that there's a downtown and then there's that highway that runs next to you, and they're kind of one and the same for you. But they spoke about egg choice, and so I felt like I needed to find a photo, and I hadn't taken one. The truth of the matter is that an industrial park won't be found because somebody drove by. What you really need to just think about is whether or not you're on the right, on location 1 at the Kansas Department of Commerce, so that people know you have that kind of space. But the real thing that you have is you have some open downtown businesses, which are opportunities for entrepreneurs who want to start their own small business. And that's where all the new jobs are created every year, is with individuals who have the spirit and have an idea and are willing to take that chance. With global marketing, your town becomes accessible for purchasers all over the world. We asked about healthcare services, and they noted that your hospital and medical services are available in other towns. That would be expected. We sometimes see a long-term care service, and there are none in Weir. For housing, the comments were that they noticed a few really nice homes, but they definitely noticed many homes and trailers in poor condition. Not sure the housing market would appeal to all income and wages. There seems like there's kind of a gap between very nice homes and others. Many homes lacked curb appeal, and they saw 1 or 2 homes for sale in the city. When we asked about rental housing, they didn't see any apparent rental housing, no ads or signs. Here's a selection of houses from your city. I really try to get something from every quadrant of the city, but often then I forget about where those quadrants are. They just become a list of houses at that point. The data on housing says that you have more unoccupied houses, more vacant houses than the Kansas average. Your owner occupation rate is way higher than the Kansas average. And your family households, this is any household that has children under the age of 18. And it doesn't matter whether they're related to them or not. I look at this as a good or bad sign for the elementary schools or the schools. If we have a high level of family households. Yours is about average or a little less. The elementary school was new, very nice, but no high school. And I think they must be talking about the new portion of the elementary school. There is a website for USD 247. But one thing I typically will say, and I feel like it's true for your website as well, that your school district needs to remember that the prospective students and families are one of the audiences that should be and would be looking at this website. We want to see not just whether they're having corn dogs on Tuesday and chili on Wednesday, but why do you love your schools? Why would we choose your school? It's not even necessarily data. It might be something else. So here's a great example, and your partner city, Mound City, was the reason I found this. I looked up Mound City schools and found Mound City, Missouri. And I think this is the best example of telling us why you love your schools as that I've seen. They chose some data links about what's great about their schools, but those might be anecdotal links too. I have seen on small rural schools, our teachers are dedicated. The majority of our teachers grew up in this area, love this area, and are dedicated to our students. Or our drama department is exceptional. Our art department is first rate and recognized by others in the state. Anything that describes why you love your schools. From my perspective, when I look at this photo, I understand that these folks believe in science and understand the value of masks as keeping their students safe. Childcare is not something a first impressions visitor would expect to see, but we'll always report on it because it's a really important aspect of economic development. Your people need to have the opportunity to go to work and they may very well need childcare to do it. The data for Cherokee County is much better, believe it or not. You're reaching about 66% of the required need, and it's not unusual for me to see a community reaching less than 40% of the need. Now, this is for all Cherokee County, and that doesn't mean that it's anywhere that is close for somebody in their workplace, but it's not bad data. And just be aware that Child Care Aware is really wants to be available and accessible to you to help you to create a child care plan that increases the access of quality child care for your children. Visitors were aware of 3 churches, and I missed one of them, so I had to get it from the internet. If something has changed since 2014, then this may not be a representative picture. You have a civic center in the category of civic organizations. They saw a civic center and a Masonic lodge. They thought there might be a 4-H club. We heard that they just put on a movie for the town to come out and watch, and that's a nice thing, that if there's activities and events going on. This public infrastructure question is meant to address the infrastructure in other parts of the community, not downtown. The streets are mostly chip and seal, but they are in good shape. The streets are marked and seem to have good signage all over town. There were no comments about the senior center, and you can imagine that maybe it's because it's not terribly visible. The senior center in many small towns is the place where all the cars are if I hit town in the right time of day. At City Hall, we asked them to please go into City Hall, and they found good information there. The city clerk and the city superintendent were very nice and very informative, and that's always good news. And it doesn't always happen, sadly. You would think that in a small town, people would recognize that these strangers walking in the door need to see the best side of us, but that doesn't always happen. We talk about the fire and EMS and police services. Again, it's kind of like childcare. It's not our strong point to be able to observe whether or not they're good, but they're important, right? And so one of the reasons I put this screen on here with the Kansas Insurance Commissioner on there is because your communities have taught me how important it is to have a fire department with the right training and the right gear to go along with it. In the words of one city clerk, when their volunteer fire department upgraded their ISO rating, it saved everyone in town $300 a year on their fire insurance, even homeowners, especially homeowners. There's a newly built library. Sadly, they weren't there at a time that they could go inside, but it looked nice. And we always like to see the library's hours posted because it doesn't have to be open all day, every day, but it should be predictable so that people can plan a trip to the library. At the city parks, we're talking about, we asked what they saw in the city parks. They observed a baseball field that it was in which was in decent shape. They saw 3 different parks. One is the cities, one is the churches, and one at the schools. And there's also an arena owned by the Saddle Club. I look at all these structures and I just wonder where we would be without the WPA projects. That sure looks like a WPA project to me. Are you well known for an attraction or event? Well, it's not evident unless you talk to the city clerk, but she is good to always tell us about Weir being the home of the fly swatter. Seems like that'd be a really fun event to circle something around. Any natural or man-made features that can draw people? Well, I don't know how you draw people to it, but I stood and looked at this water tower for a long time and wondered what it was. It seems like you could do something fun with that. Yeah. It's typical. We ask about visitor center, and it's very typical, as in your case, that City Hall is the visitor center. They didn't see any signs showing how to get there, and it wasn't located on main streets. So you can see, I did see a sign, but you know, maybe it's not as big as you'd want it to be. What would bring you back? Well, they couldn't, frankly, find anything to bring them back. The most positive observations, they have a nice school district and a nice library. The city clerk and the staff seem to be trying to get the community involved in things. There is room for expanding, and the town is trying to get the community more involved in public events. What are the biggest obstacles that Weir faces? The biggest obstacle is the fact that they are so close to other big cities. I've seen that before in these remarks, and I don't consider that an obstacle. Yes, it might be an obstacle to the fact that you're not going to get a medical center here, but the services that you need are in those cities. So I think that's instead an opportunity. Small town with a lack of funds to move forward very fast, dealing with the EPA on smelting issues and being so close to such a big town. I assume they must have heard that from somebody. That's not something an observer can see. And by the way, that's completely appropriate. We tell them to talk to anybody they want to about what the town's impressions are. So 6 months from now, what will you remember? And it's a great comment that they will mostly remember how kind and welcoming the staff was at City Hall. The old water tower and the very friendly people. They didn't see very many people, but the ones they saw were all nice. So recommendations that I would make to you from this, and you may see others. Your school website. Tell us why you love your schools. As I've said before, it could be quotes from individuals. It can be facts. It can be anecdotes. Consider search engine optimization. When I looked for your schools, I saw this as being, when I put Weir, Kansas schools, this came up as number 5 in your our web search, and we'd like to see it a lot higher. Get to know each other, create opportunities to decide, why do we love our town? And you know, I don't think I put it as a recommendation here, but I'm not sure why I didn't. One thing that you should look for, maybe I saw that it was there and that's the reason I didn't add it, but when you're on your city website, it would be important to name the access to resources. So while you don't have any healthcare in your town, a great thing that I've seen in other towns is a list of places that you can get hospital care or long-term living, or where do you go for doctors and physicians and optometrists and the services, the medical services you don't have. And the best way to express that is in the number of minutes, because 15 miles for you is probably 15 minutes, whereas a 15-minute drive in Overland Park might be a short walk away. So I'd like to thank our visitors, our volunteers, and our leaders. I'm always hesitant to say their names. Amy Zortz, the city clerk, led the effort, and I'll let you tell you who the other visitors are. We often think that people might want to be anonymous in case the other town sees anything, but your comments were very complimentary. So I hope the next steps for you are to think about discussions and where you can have these discussions. They might be in the coffee shop, they might be at the grocery store, they might be anywhere, but I hope you'll consider ways and opportunities. Maybe it'll loosen up so that we can have a potluck dinner and talk about this. But the thing that we know is that people move in the direction of their conversations. And so if just by having conversations, if we can move away from talking about the fact that our town is dying to the fact that our town is in the middle of everywhere, if we can move to talking about what are the opportunities here and how can I help, then everything will improve. If not for everyone, then for the helpers themselves. I want to tell you some things that I'm seeing around me. Just in the last month, I have seen this CBS news report of a Tulane University researcher who says there isn't a community in America, particularly in coastal America, where we are not seeing a transition from the coast to higher ground. If you saw that report like I did, one of the things they said about Kansas was the struggle to find enough water. And I don't think that's an issue for you in Cherokee County. So yet another asset you have and that you don't even notice. Kansas Pride is a program that has been at K-State Research and Extension. It's a partnership between the Kansas Department of Commerce and K-State and has been helping communities for 50 years to coalesce around ideas. What do we want to preserve, create, or improve for their future, and to give volunteers ways to work together. I teach grant writing workshops, and this pandemic has given me the opportunity to put this in an online format. So if you're interested in learning how to write grants and bring more resources to your community, that's certainly an option. There's a lot of grant money out there. I referred to the First Friday calls. You notice I talked to you about Ben Winchester's call. We come together the first Friday of every month. And our goal is to connect those small businesses and communities with resources like this to help them be successful. And so you can look on the calendar of events to see all the new calls, but you've missed about 4 years worth of calls, and there's an awful lot of good ones out there, including one of the best, one of the most highly viewed is called Filling Empty Buildings. And the Filling Empty Buildings one was done by these ladies. This is a couple of ladies named Deb Brown and Becky McCrae. And these two ladies are no fancy pants consultants. They're real people who live in small towns. Becky lives in Alva, Oklahoma, a town of about 5,000. And Deb is from Webster City, Iowa, a town of 8,000. And they have made it their work to look at small towns and give you the best ideas that they've seen all over the world, literally all over the world. And I really, really can't say enough about their weekly little emails. They give you really good ideas, and they produce some good stories, including this one, which was previewed over here. Zoom towns. The pandemic taught us all that we can work away from the office. And so people no longer have to work where they live or live where they work. In fact, a survey by an employment organization found that Americans under the age of 30 are the only group whose top desired place to live is not rural. And even for them, rural was their second choice. Even for the youngest persons, rural was their second choice. And so Upwork talks about the fact that the pivot to remote work is the biggest, fastest transformation in the labor market since World War II mobilization. And they give a lot of data about the fact that people are very happy to be somewhere, as Ben Winchester said, with a slower pace of life, more safety and security, the ability for your kids to walk home from school, all the things that people love, and you have it. These are the same people. Small Biz Survival and Savior.town are the same people. And they, over here, they produce webinars, monthly webinars. They're making them shorter now, about 30 minutes long. And here's this Zoomtown thing that they ended up putting on their website because it was just so important. The webinars are really inexpensive. Lately, they've been as low as $5 a piece. But when they're back at the same rate, they're usually $20 a piece. You pay once and you show it as many times as you want. And they even encourage, once you've paid for it, get people together so you can do it remotely. This concept is about working together as businesses. Remember, I talked to you about co-marketing between Facebook pages. Here's Maple Hill, Kansas, a population of 600. And they have really probably only 2 businesses, but they are one of them is brand new. This one started during the pandemic, and she had a knack for marketing. And so she walked literally across the street, and they talked to each other about, how can we co-market with each other and refer one to the other. Becky and Deb refer this to this concept to coffee and calendars. Just get yourselves together at a table with your coffee and your calendars and talk about what's coming up and how to promote each other. The Kansas Department of Agriculture will work with your community to think about the best opportunities for growth using the agriculture assets of your region. The Kansas Healthy Food Initiative is at K-State and is looking for ways to help secure healthy food and make sure your grocery store can stay in your community, or at a grocery store if you don't have one. And that's what I have. I really appreciate your time and attention. And if I or any of my colleagues at K-State Research and Extension can help you, I hope you'll reach out to me. Thanks so much.